Thank God I'm sitting on 88% upload on my second channel. So it's on 89 now, 3 minutes left. So everything is looking good. For me, in this particular regard, stuff is uploading fast. So amen, God has seen my cries. But I am late in my uploads. Please go check out the previous 2 parts to gauge your bearings as to what's going on here. Now I'm going to tell you the dream that I had. In that dream, I was in some, how can I describe this? Okay, there is some horror movie that I watched on Showmax, right? It's a South African show. I don't have a subscription to Showmax, but on Showmax, if you want to watch something on there, let me not give people ideas, but you can basically get 2 weeks trial, all right, before you have to pay anything. So I wanted to watch some movie. I looked for it on Netflix. It wasn't on Netflix, and I realized that it was on Showmax. And then I tried to see if at all, I can't be given a sneak peek on Showmax, and I realized that I can actually get a whole 2 weeks free on Showmax. So I watched that show, but then after watching that show on Showmax, I then scanned around Showmax since I still had another 2 weeks left what to watch, and there was something called a movie there called Pinky Pinky. If you are South African, you would know 100% what that means, but for the sake of non-South Africans, I will explain what that is. So when I was growing up in the 90s, let's say late 80s, I was born in 1984, so late 80s, early 90s, there was this problem in South Africa that even made the news. Okay, so as to help you guys understand that spiritual activity is real, demons are real, witchcraft is real, hauntings are real. Oftentimes when people are speaking about some threat at a lake where there is some snake that's eating children alive, yes, it could be an urban legend and a myth, but sometimes it's real. And in this country, so real was this thing that it made the news. It made the news, and it made newspapers at the time. I was tempted to think that it's nothing at all to write home about as a child until it made the news, and that's when I started to get scared of it. And it is this Pinky Pinky thing. So Pinky Pinky is like a monster thing, apparently. Some man that died long ago, that was a sexual pervert, I think, that passed away in the girls' bathroom in particular, and he had an obsession with pink underwear, pink panties. So the best way to basically prevent yourself from getting hurt by Pinky Pinky as a girl is to not go into the bathroom by yourself, and also to not wear pink underwear. You must always use the bathroom when there's lots of other girls in there, and make sure that your underwear is any other color but pink. Because if you're wearing pink underwear and if you're in there alone, Pinky Pinky is gonna get you. He's gonna, usually this Pinky Pinky creature operates from public bathrooms in particular, communal bathrooms, and not so much the one at your home. Go ahead, right? So when I was in grade 3, standard 1, grade 3, all right, this thing was just a thing in my school. It was a thing. Girls were so scared of Pinky Pinky. There was this song, my name is Pinky Pinky, I live in the toilet, I'm going to, whatever. It was a whole thing. And when the story first circulated around my primary school, go Mayfair Convent, I was initially, I've always been kind of suspicious and mysterious as a little girl. I wasn't credulous. I wasn't gullible. I didn't just run with stuff, okay? So I was just whatever. But remember, I told you, it made the news, and that's what made me really focus on it. Type thing. And girls in the school started to claim that they had seen Pinky Pinky, that they'd been afflicted by Pinky Pinky, that Pinky Pinky scratched them when they were peeing in the bathroom. And so I also started to low-key be scared of using the toilet because of Pinky Pinky at school, right? This Pinky Pinky thing, this urban legend, essentially a haunting in South African schools, because it was gunning out here for kids in school, be it high school or primary, it didn't matter. But girls were scared of this thing, and it was just the girls' bathroom, and there was no issue with the boys, right? So they did a remake of that phenomenon in the 90s, but apparently it started even back in the 80s and 70s, kids who are still in high school and primary school in the 80s and 70s. Apparently it started even back then. but night was still a thing when I was in primary school, which was in the 90s. Okay, yeah, so they redid this Pinky Pinky thing, and it's now a horror movie on Showmax. And the only reason I clicked on it was because I remembered the name Pinky Pinky. I was like, yo, but it's a movie got Pinky Pinky, right? So Kakabo went on right ahead and watched Pinky Pinky. Okay, fine. So Pinky Pinky, the whole premise of the story behind Pinky Pinky is what was covered in that show, right? In that movie, where it is that it was a young girl that, went to a boarding school, and she lost a whole bunch of friends. A whole bunch of students in that boarding school, girls, went missing and they were killed by Pinky Pinky. That's the whole moral of the story. In the bathroom, this monster killed these girls because he was, prior to passing away, he was a sexual pervert that died in a very violent way because of his sexual perversion, and then decided to haunt the girls he used to rape. The age group, basically, by killing them as a dead man. It was a real thing. It really did happen in South Africa, and it was so real that it made the national news. Okay, you can go Google it yourself. You thoroughly can go Google it. It was in the Star newspaper. It was on the news, like as in primetime, nighttime news. A haunting of that nature. So come to Africa if you want an ecosystem of people acknowledging that spirits are real. They will even cover these things in official mainstream media news. You cannot deny it. In South Africa right now, there is a show called Expressions that is part of SABC, which is a main news channel in this country, that covered the practice of ukutwala. Right? Ukutwala is like carrying an entity in order to gain yourself wealth and stuff. It got covered by mainstream media. That's how wacko African spirituality is. It makes it onto mainstream media because it's that real to us. It's that much of an issue. It's that, so dabblers, no one in Africa can claim craziness of a person saying, Giboloy, goodness, like enough people believe in it for, if at all a person raises suspicion about it, for you to not get away with it. So I don't know why people living in Africa allow themselves to turn to darkness, because once you get busted, the villagers with their pitchforks are going to come out and try to slay you. Anyway, whatever. So this Pinky Pinky, you've gotten the premise of the story now, right? In my dream, the whole dream was in a setting of that boarding school. The whole dream was in the setting of the boarding school I saw in the movie Pinky Pinky. I had to give you that context. I wasn't trying to confess to anybody that I watched Pinky Pinky, but I had to, because it made it to my dream. Right? God was showing me the spiritual climate of the country and the spiritual climate of basically like black people, maybe even not just in the country. My whole dream was in that ecosystem. It was premised in that boarding school. Okay? And I was among the students in this boarding school, and so was my cousin among the students in this boarding school. I saw a whole bunch of other girls in the school that I don't recognize in waking life, but they were all my peers, my classmates. Another person that was in that dream was Kelly Rowland, as in Beyonce's partner in Destiny's Child, etc. Now, let me give you context about Kelly Rowland a little bit in terms of my particular life, right? When we were growing up, my cousin and I, best friends in the family, right? Absolutely tight bosom buddies, went together everywhere. We were birds of a feather. We were inseparable, okay? And we used to be playful. You know how girls, when they've got like a role model or whatever, how it is that they will emulate that role model. When they love a girl band, they will pretend to be this member of the girl band. You will be this person, you will be that person, you will be that person. My cousin was always bossy over me when I was growing up. She was older than me by a couple of months, and on top of that, she was a yellow bone. And yellow girls in black culture are just these highly, like, they are these like rich commodities in the black community. So every parent wants a yellow bone baby because everybody's gonna think they're cute, everybody's gonna love them, everybody's gonna invite them to pageants, etc. That was the case anyway when I was growing up. Maybe things have changed right now. My cousin was the yellow bone and I was the dark-skinned girl, so I was largely overlooked and ignored, and I was content with it. Whatever, I didn't care. I was born and bred in that environment, so it did not look like anything wrong to me. Nothing looked weird to me that I was so overlooked, because for me, apparently that's how life was. I didn't know any better. I did not have time to complain, neither have qualms with being sidelined for my cousin, because I grew up just like that. That was my environment. I was raised essentially to just put her on a pedestal, put her above me type establishment thing. I did not have an issue with it. ever, actually, until she started to envy me because tables turned later on in life. Right, now that you have that context, that's cool. So my cousin was always above me. There was a show in the country called Shell Road to Fame. Shell Road to Fame. You will remember it if you grew up in the 90s or 80s. It was a talent show in South Africa. My cousin and I had aspirations, if our parents would let us, to go to Shell Road to Fame. And when we would go to Shell Road to Fame, we were going to basically emulate a girl band that we respected and adored in these streets. And then Destiny's Child rose up from the woodworks, and they were singing like, bills, 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 can you pay my bills? Destiny's Child was a girl band that was older than us by just a few years. They were older than us by just 3 years. And my cousin and I, when they were first new on the scene, you will remember that Beyonce and Kelly and Latavia, the first Destiny's Child, they in and of themselves were just little girls. They were like 16, 15 when they started Destiny's Child, right? So that means that my cousin and I were like 12, 13. We were super duper little. And Shell Road to Fame around that time was a thing in the country. So when Destiny's Child came on the scene in the 90s, right, we loved them. We absolutely loved them. And then we would audition, practice, using wooden spoons and everything with the other girls in the community that we could find to be Destiny's Child. And because my cousin was the yellow bone that was well revered all over the show, having been invited to like talent shows and not talent shows but beauty pageants to join them because she was this beautiful little yellow bone baby girl, she then automatically became Beyonce. And because I was too icy to my cousin, number two, it was evident, it was clear with the Destiny's Child of back then that Kelly was number two in this whole thing. And then everybody else was just everybody else, okay? Everybody else was just everybody else. So my cousin was Beyonce. I was Kelly. I was always Kelly. And then the other two girls, it would be whoever else was part of the crew. Whoever else was happy to come and audition with us, or to practice with us. I didn't care, I didn't mind. Beyonce has always been a lead singer, even after Destiny's Child graduated from the former members and they now were giving everybody leads in music. Nonetheless, everybody was always just looking at Beyonce as the lead character. And the thing that put Beyonce on the forefront that way was indeed discrimination. It was clear. It was discrimination because of the fact that the management of the team, the management of the girl band that was Destiny's Child was Beyonce's parents. It was Beyonce's parents. So nobody could ever shine. Nobody could ever shine above Beyonce. The stakes were always in her favor. And the only person out of all of Destiny's Child that ever accepted that and took it in a stride was always Kelly. She took a lot of rubbish lying down and she allowed Beyonce's dad to make her fade in the background of Beyonce, to a point of basically Kelly still to this day is still in the shadow of Beyonce when she could have been a whole shining thing by herself. Now that is a person embracing a lifetime of being in someone's shadow when you in and of yourself have got so much going for yourself. I remember when Destiny's Child was still around new on the block, we all in the crew of girlfriends thought that Kelly had the best body, that she had the most beautiful legs, right? And however, despite that, somehow Beyonce managed to take over Kelly's body and make herself the body. Beyonce became the body of Destiny's Child when Kelly had by far the best legs in the group. So there were a lot of things that were just kind of not, it was clear that Kelly would have done better if she had just been a solo artist, but that's how she started. Beyonce was like to her indeed, just like with me, a cousin, right? It's like family. You're not going to abandon family. So you like somebody that's just accepting that you will always be in the shadow of someone, even though you've got so much going for your particular, on that day, you're basically facing a future of feelings of insecurity, insignificance, and always just been in the shadow, being in the shadow of somebody and not being able to rise as a star on your own without everybody always comparing you to another person. That would have been my life if I was not so intelligent, and also if I was not superior to my cousin in certain other respects. God made sure that I did not stay a Kelly. So I was to my cousin, I was Kelly, she was Beyonce, and then everybody else could choose who they wanted to be, right? We never ended up going to Shell Road to Fame or whatever, but we definitely did love Destiny's Child in the beginning stages of their career. And then my cousin fell off the bandwagon briefly. I followed suit because some boy that she liked didn't like Destiny's Child, and then later on, after I matriculated, I was like, I love them, and so I went back to being a big fan. But that was now that you understand that was the ecosystemic nature, the temperature of life in the 90s. when I was growing up. I was always in the shadow of my cousin, especially in primary school, because there she was the beautiful girl, she was the yellow bone, she was the one that was boss or in the crew of girls. She was, always just kind of tops. We then went our own separate ways in terms of schools. We stopped going to the same schools because our parents took us to different schools. I finished my primary school at Winchester Ridge Primary. She finished it wherever it is that she finished it, okay? Her primary school, and we went to different high schools. Thank God for that. If at all our parents had sent us to the same schools, I probably would have stayed in the shadow of my cousin all the way up until matric. But I ended up going to another one school. She went to another school, and in my school I was an independent. I was my own mind, and I was a leader in my own right. I had a climate and a presence by myself, coupled with the fact that unlike her, I was an academic. I was scholastic type thing. So I was serious about school. I was serious about things that my cousin just wasn't. I also was a lot slower than her in terms of bufaste, dating and all that jazz. So I was not so all over the show with boys. 1 minute, guys, I need to upload this content and move over to the next. Goodness, this thing is taking its merry time. 1 minute. Yeah, I was the academic, right? And so I was a lot more responsible, less feisty with boys. Like I was less, hectic, nalifaste in a way that I just wasn't, type thing. And that ultimately is a thing. That's what you guys must understand. That pays off later on in life. When you're a lot more reserved, calm, cool, and collected when you're growing up, okay, that stuff pays off in the end, even though when everybody's still fast and running amok rampant in these streets, they kind of consider you boring and backward. Yeah, it eventually pays off. Not only does it pay off later on in life because you make better decisions, you also end up gaining more favor from guys when you're less all over the show type thing. And that is a table that started to turn when we got older. And by older, I'm not even talking corporate. I'm speaking just 17, 18, matric. By the time we got to basically senior high school, later years of high school, my cousin was kind of ipogatetopogile. She had been there and done it. And I was still the virgin-like thing, roaming these streets. And on top of that, I was, what do you call this? I was fresh. I was new in the room. Not only that, but I was quiet. I was shy. You're the quiet, shy type. That was me. I was like the quiet, shy type. And so I left. I was very mysterious in that regard, and it also caused everybody to think of me as the sweet little innocent thing. And everybody knew that I was my cousin's cousin because I tended to be introduced everywhere as my cousin's cousin as opposed to just Karabo. I was always her cousin instead of just Karabo. Yeah, but then I started to gain clout on my own. Plus, when I was in high school, like I said, I gained my own clout because I was my own person in high school without her there, because she had her own high school and I had my own. That enabled, the Lord used that to break me away from being in the shadow of my cousin, and to also see the folly of my cousin's ways. One, I was an academic. Like I said, I was a lot more serious about school and whatnot. And when I also noticed that guys liked the fact that I was so reserved, so quiet, so cool, so calm, so collected, and so rarely perused, I also started to have respect for it. I started to have respect for the fact that guys eventually, even though they're hypocrites, respect girls that keep themselves in a bunch. So that gave me clout over my cousin. So tables turned in late high school, and they never stopped turning. Because once I matriculated, all the decisions I made in earlier years that were better than hers were paying off. I was the one that was studying. I was the one that upon ending up working in corporate, I did really well. I got regarded. I was smart. I had paid attention in class. I had listened in school. And so I was I did well. And my cousin, however, was still making bad decisions and what have you. I'm going to fast track the story quick and furious. The Lord separated me from my cousin when I was still young, so I would not be under the shadow of somebody that would have continued to overshadow me if I did not realize the girth I truly had. So unlike Kelly Rowland, who stayed in the shadow of Beyonce, the Lord took me from under the shadow of Beyonce until I became mightier than Beyonce. The Beyonce in my particular question, in my particular issue and circumstance, never let go of the fact that she was supposed to be the one everybody was looking at. My cousin remembered her early fame, and me taking her over in a Mobora, it never sat well with her. It caused so much jealousy in her that she became competitive in an almost beastly, menacing, homicidal sense. She would do anything to overwhelm and coup me. And remember, Beyonce's parents pretty much set Kelly up for failure and any other member of Destiny's Child to always be in the shadow of Beyonce. They proliferated the agenda of their own child. Unfortunately for me, Beyonce's parents in this particular instance would be my cousin's parents. And he, the dad, was the one given the baton by my grandmother since he was the only boy. After my grandmother passed away, to basically take care of the affairs of the entire family, right? Therefore, all of the little girls and little boys around my uncle, whenever there are things falling apart off the shelves in the family, they always go to him for mediation. He is the patriarchy in the whole family that is holding the crown. He is by testate succession based on the last will and testament of my grandmother. My uncle Kibozo, the other family. He is like a king in the family. He is the one through whom everybody, when they want to get lobolad, they go through him. He's that guy. So when there are issues raised among people in the family and nobody can resolve them, he is trusted to be wise enough to mediate, but he lacks the wisdom of Solomon. And so my uncle, inevitably, when things were hitting the fan in my life and I went to him to cry and complain because he's the king of the family, given that I was at loggerheads and at war with his daughter, he took the side of his child. And on top of that, his wife also convinced him to do that. Initially, he was like, "Wahlanya, udawe, utsubile madekwane, ngwanaka. O wrong against you, karabo ke sure. Ke a tseba o go jwang." Because my uncle had been subjugated to the tyranny of his daughter's, his daughter's indiscretions, his daughter's wayward state when we were growing up. There was a day when I was watching Ally McBeal, up and down on this road, walking the line. Yeah, whatever. It was one of my favorite shows growing up. On Monday night, I remember, I am back from school. I'm still wearing school uniform. Busihu on the couch watching Ally McBeal. And my uncle, rocks up at my mother's door, Busihu, asking me, "Where's my child?" "Yo, it's your kid, bro. I don't know. Where's my kid?" Because of the fact that he knows that me and his kid are tight, but he also knows that I'm responsible. So now I'm going to school, but daughter, bankile skolo ki Tuesday, ki Monday night. Haya skolong. Did not go to school. Ally McBeal is playing. Ally McBeal used to start at 9 p.m. at night. And I was in the middle of Ally McBeal. I never missed a single episode. And it was back before video on demand where you could repeat a show. So I missed that particular episode of Ally McBeal, at least the last 20 minutes or whatever. Because my uncle was all up in the door. "Karabo, where's my child?" I'm like, "I don't know." And he's like, "Well, take me to where my child has a boyfriend." What's about boyfriend at Tenkomolata? My uncle went and fetched his daughter, cause Sprite View. Not Sprite View, nah. Did not fetch the daughter at Sprite View, but he made me show him the house where the boyfriend of my cousin lives in Sprite View. He collected me in my school uniform, quiet in my uncle's car as we drove all the way to the east of Johannesburg on a school night. So really, I gotta sleep, uncle, at some point. Hore, my uncle alobata his child, because his child did not come home. Knock on the door of the boyfriend. The boyfriend is also scrawny, skinny like me. The two of us are shaking outside, and I'm like, boyfriend, my uncle said that we must come here to get his daughter. I just showed him where you stay, because he insisted that he wants to see where you stay so he can fetch his child. And this boyfriend was like, "I don't know where she's at. I also have not seen her all weekend. I can't get a hold of her." That was my cousin. So basically, my cousin and her boyfriend ended up breaking up because of that whole thing. Due to the fact that the boyfriend was like, "Mokuphi vele? Abantu bakini bazela kimi. Bazongihlaza phambi kwabazali bami." On some like, really, where is our child? And so their relationship kind of fizzled away and ended because this boyfriend of hers realized that, "Wait, I'm dating Nyoko. I'm dating rubbish." Yeah, so basically the relationship of my cousin and her boyfriend was ended by me giving the dad directions to Ndriako, that guy, go Spirit View. That's the kind of girl that she was. And that is therefore the kind of girl that the dad knew she was. School uniform. Yes, watching Ally McBeal. His own child was not at home. So he knew that I was the more responsible one. My uncle also, as my career grew, he saw where it came from. When I was getting stronger and stronger, he saw, well, of course, Karabo was going to get far. Because na itlhekile ko skolong. O na le right na bala, na pasa. Mara di cherry wa go etsa home economics le geography. Hana motho tlhaloganyang greater bore the subject set eo etsang for motho. She ended up being the one to do random things later on, disappointing the living daylights out of her parents. It was inevitable. And this thing ate away at this wannabe Beyonce. Like, so much did it eat away at her that she decided that she's going to decimate me. There was a time when she turned her back on me, but I rose again. And now she then learned witchcraft. She taught herself witchcraft. And upon teaching herself witchcraft, then decided that she's finally going to permanently eradicate me, this time around with spirits. And instead of it taking a couple of months for me to bounce back like it did the first time, yeah, this time it's been like almost a decade that I've been buried underground. This woman that has always been untrusted in her ecosystem nonetheless gained favor from her own dad, her family, just like Beyonce's parents, always taking on Beyonce's career above Kelly at the expense of everybody else. You're all going to be under my child. You're going to be subjugated to the tyranny of my child. You are going to be lowly in comparison to my child. No one will ever compare to my child. So even though all of y'all are going to be Destiny's Child, my child is going to be the boss. That was Beyonce's parents. Very unfortunate. And, you know, Beyonce's parents are so, like, to any other woman in the periphery of Beyonce, that they even went on, Matthew Knowles, went even out of his way to tease and diss a child. Like a Gen Z. Beyonce is an Xennial. She's a millennial / Generation X. And Beyonce's dad went and teased and mocked and made into nothing a Gen Z upcoming artist, only because she was compared to Beyonce. Chloe Bailey, the one all naked all over the show in comparison to her sister Halle. Yeah. Matthew Knowles went and spoke so much smack against Chloe that I was like, it's typical. That's what Beyonce's dad has been doing to other girls around Beyonce, to a point of not even recognizing the inappropriateness of dissing a child that sees his daughter as a role model. She's in no competition for Beyonce. They're in completely different generations. She is on the come up while Beyonce is established in the music industry, and yet Matthew Knowles is still pulling a Latavia like Chloe. Yeah, he is still messing with the futures and careers of other girls in the periphery of Beyonce, setting them up for failure. That's always been the case in the whole Destiny's Child thing. We know that that's what's going on, but because Beyonce is the one that got to rise and be whatever it is that she is, it looks as if though they were just bitter. Abo Latavia, everybody else. You know the song Survivor, I'm a survivor. It is based on the fact that they fell apart out of Destiny's Child, those other crew, and now they look like these losers. Whereas really, truly, Beyonce's dad was what it is that he's always been. Domineering his child, smearing her in everybody's face to a point where everybody else in the room can't breathe. They're suffocating. Because here it is that she's what she is today. But everybody else that was in her shadow basically has just fizzled away. My cousin and her family have made out of just about anything that walks in that ecosystem Beyonce. Do you understand? Out of everybody. To a point where, like, you know, Beyonce, the parents weren't even as focused on who is this girl. I even forgot her name. Beyonce's little sister. Yeah, Solange, yes. Yeah, even Solange's career took a backseat to Beyonce's in the parents' eyes. And that's the same thing that happened with my cousin's little sister. They just focused on this one reprobate. Like, frankly, like, Beyonce was better because she was disciplined. And so the parents, upon pushing her agenda, could trust in the fact that she's going to do a better thing. But my uncle went and invested all of his eggs in the basket of a derelict, miscreant child, at the expense of a second daughter, a baby sister that was more responsible than her own older sister. And yet the dad focused his energies on this girl. So my uncle is literally exactly like Matthew Knowles, the carbon copy of Matthew Knowles, proliferating the agenda of one of your girl children at the expense of the whole planet. The whole freaking earth must just bow down to Beyonce. I don't know what in the world under heaven that eventually does in the heart of siblings. I don't know what that eventually does in the heart of friends. What Kelly is thinking, feeling today. What is going to happen as the years progress and they become old women? Well, is she not sitting where she's sitting saying, I wish I'd never joined Destiny's Child, because then today I'd be an independent woman. I would be independent from being in the shadow of Beyonce. Yes, I've made millions. Yes, I have done successfully well. I'm more wealthy and I'm more successful than most women on the earth. But at the end of the day, I don't have the level of independence that most women on the earth have to be themselves. I'm always just the other member of Destiny's Child. I can't stand that. When time progresses, people get to that point. God saw that I would get there with my cousin. that I would eventually start to feel like, but I'm my own woman. So he separated our parents' decisions for high school, even though we were in the same primary schools initially. And it was there where I did my own independent thing, while and I basically got to grow into being Karabo. And that ate away at her like no man's business. So if Kelly had been allowed to grow up and be Kelly, who knows what under heaven she would be doing today, and how free she would be from the clutch of the chains that she feels for being under Beyonce's shadow. She'd be a completely different woman today. And she would also be regarded and viewed in the ecosystem around her as a completely different woman. If anything, I believe Kelly's ex-husband used to diss and tease her. There's a song that she did of that nature, for being in the shadow of Beyonce, and that she will never compare to Beyonce. Imagine that being you. Kelly would have gone on right ahead to marry a man that would never have seen it necessary to compare her to Beyonce if she had never been part of Destiny's Child. She might not have maybe grown into the musical beast that she became, but she might have lived an independent from Beyonce enough life to be regarded in her own unique light in a way that today she isn't. And my cousin, that was the plan, but it's failing abysmally. She's got an irresponsible father that will stand with her no matter what. And while initially my uncle was like, "Ginyoko, my child, wa bora wa tena," because khalanza bora, khalanza tena. Okay, she's always been irresponsible. My cousin's mother, the mom, went and did what she imagined to be speaking sense into her husband on some, let's say her name is Ruru. Ruru ke ngwana rona. Ruru is our child. Karabo is just a niece. Karabo is a niece. We did love her like a child, but like, really, if we had to choose between Ruru and Karabo, my oh my, like, come on. She's the one that came out of our womb. She's the one that we conceived. And here it is that she's finally getting a life together after living her life as an irresponsible derelict. She had made some pretty horrible decisions for her life up until a certain point, but now look, she's rising. And Gara was accusing her of witchcraft. Are you seriously going to take Garabo's side and make it look as if the only way that our child can succeed is if she waves a magic wand in the sky? Ruru has done something evil to Garabo, it's obvious. Because Garabo's not the kind of person like that. Karabo is not irresponsible. Karabo has never ever worn a derelict disposition. Karabo has always been responsible. That is clear. Everybody knows that. Nobody suspects her of any wrongdoing. But even though nobody suspects her of any real wrongdoing, it appears everybody's prepared to pretend that she's wrong. So since everybody's prepared to pretend, why don't we just run with this? Everybody knows she's innocent, but even her own mom is pretending she's wrong. Ratzeboro, she's not wrong. We know she's a good girl. We know. After all, it was her that we picked up to go and basically pinpoint us to the homes of boyfriends that we imagined our daughter was hiding in or not coming home over the weekends as a teenager. Karabo was always the one bringing home the excellent report card. She was always the one at home whenever somebody was looking for her. However, Ururu, nale all over. Everybody knows Ruru is a loose cannon. But for whatever strange reason, and can nobody understand what's going on, everybody's now trying to pretend like Ruru is bigger and better than Karabo, and that Karabo has lost her mind. Karabo's own mom has turned against her. So too has Karabo's own sister. They all want to come against her. We gotta use this. It's our opportunity for our daughter to shine. It's our opportunity for us to look like we raised well. It's our opportunity to look like we raised our child well. It's obvious. It's clear that she has cast spells on Karabo. And it's clear that Karabo's mom and sister are being strangely irresponsible towards Karabo. But if you get to look like a shining star when you're not, why in the world would you not do that? Why can't we shine for once for having brought forth children into this world that are geniuses passing in school, that are doing well in corporate? Why should our children always come second and third to everybody else? No. This is our chance. My aunt spoke what she imagines to be sense into my uncle. She told my uncle, you're not going to intervene as an egalitarian intervener. You're not going to be fair. You've been given the baton to run the affairs of the family as king because you're the only son. But you're going to be irresponsible with this decision because this is our child. So there was no fairness. And that's where Matthew Knowles essentially rose up from the spirit of my uncle as my uncle's alter ego, going on right ahead to build up Beyonce's career at the expense of Kelly Rowland. My uncle was like, Karabo is a genius. I see why under heaven it is that she's doing so well in corporate. But I am, after all, Matthew Knowles. And my daughter is Beyonce, not Kelly. I'm not about to let the world praise some other person's child at the expense of my own. That was my uncle's decision. So he allowed me to get thrown around like a dust mite, like rubbish rolling around in Jeffela on the floor unloved. He watched my mom act a fool and did not intervene appropriately. My grandmother would be tossing in his grave. My uncle initially started out rebuking my mom for treating me strangely. That was my uncle at first. And then one day he just decided that, you know what, we're gonna keep quiet. And it had nothing to do with protecting his sister, my mom. It had everything to do with him protecting his legacy, his children, the kids of which needed a freaking occult boost in order to look good. So my uncle squandered my mom's entire inheritance. This afternoon, I overheard my mom talking to somebody on the phone, talking about how she's the age of a grandmother, but she's not a grandmother. All I could think about was, silly woman, you did that to yourself. Because by now, I would have given you something like 7 grandchildren. But you saw it fit to bury me in a hole. So now you're the only one out of all of your siblings. You're the only one that doesn't have any grandchildren. You did it to yourself. All of these grievances that I have in my heart, all I can do is just, whisper them to heaven. So the representation of Kelly Rowland in my dream has that context to it. So I've explained to you the context of Pinky Pinky, the haunting of South African girls' bathrooms in the 70s, 80s, 90s. And I've also explained to you why Kelly Rowland was in my dream. Kelly Rowland represented me because I am apparently, allegedly, a successful Kelly Rowland. Except, how naive are you? Nobody is thinking of me right now as in the shadow of my cousin. There is not a single sober soul in this mind that is thinking honestly to themselves, imaginative that my cousin is actually truly intelligent. She is like an AI bot. There had to be some kind of manipulation by human beings to make it appear more intelligent than actual human beings. And she is an AI bot that is attempting to reach singularity, but I belong to a god that has created me and is intelligent and will refuse for her to reach singularity to a point where she will be believable as my freaking replacement. It'll never happen. It'll never happen. There's nobody in these streets that thinks my cousin is smarter than me, wiser than me. Nobody in these streets is imaginative of me being less successful than my cousin. Everybody is aware, with every bone in their body, that iya tagata D1, because there is no way that you can go from being some deadbeat baby mama living at the back of your boyfriend's parents' house, having given birth to a child when you're sebenzi, so irresponsibly putting a child through all that nonsense, to all of a sudden more successful than your obviously once upon a time thriving cousin that miraculously at the same time that you rose also crashed and burned. You look like a witch. It's that basic. She looks like Sasha Fierce is operating now. Forget about Beyonce. Some alter ego demon is in operation, but I told you, the world hates disciples in my previous part. They act anomalously around a Christian. They will mistreat a believer, then go home and feel guilty. They will cause a Christian to go to prison. They will do strange things, being agents in the matrix against an individual. And once the entities leave their bodies that made them agents against Neo, they will then be like, but why did I treat Karabo like that? The devil spearheaded a whole bunch of people around my life at the same time to just turn their backs on me. And now today they all just look like a bunch of rubbishes. They now today all look like a bunch of miscreants, marauders. They now today just look like a bunch of gratuitously violent people against what is obviously an innocent woman. My innocence is stark and it is clear before all. Sadly, however, I've got so many people that walked around as agents in the Matrix that in order for them to stay looking normal, they gotta stay with the narrative and the agenda, even though I am obviously innocent. Why? Because they were made dumb by entities that hypnotized them into hurting me. And if at all they confess what's truly going on over here, they stand to be made culpable for certain crimes they committed. They stand to be accomplices to murders. They stand to be accessories to crimes because they acted a fool at a pride event and went home and felt guilty for causing the arrest of the innocent evangelist preacher at the event. People acted strangely around me when I got saved, and they all abandoned me and scattered around me, many of whom also cast spells on me, and their mistreatment, beleaguering me, as innocent as I am, as gratuitous as they were, as unwarranted as they were, is causing them to stand with narratives that don't make sense, making people that are obviously guilty, they're obviously witches, look better than they truly are. So I'm not really a Kelly. No. I am like a person that broke away from Destiny's Child early enough to have my own individual life where people are looking at me as my own individual person. But somehow Beyonce went and dragged me from the past and tried to make it look as if though I've been an umbrella and you've been under me. And I am the wind beneath your wings. I am the shade under in the sun that you're being scorched by. When she has rather taken over a woman's entire life, made her live in the shadows because her dad enabled it. Her dad enabled it. He was not fair. My cousin's dad enabled my cousin to get away with murder. She should be wearing orange kotanyani, a spiritual one right now. She should still be hovering around below sea level, ground zero, in comparison to me. If anything, she's still doing that. I'm the thing here that's arrived. Go obvious. But it's quiet because everybody's a witch out here in these streets. My YouTube channel is severely shadow banned because remember, everybody is a strange little agent in the Matrix. YouTube itself is made up of a whole bunch of agents in the Matrix that are just shooting down a woman from South Africa that they just felt, let's shadow ban her till kingdom come. Let's hide her. Let's bury her like proper. Shigion, Shigion. She will keep on cackling on a rooftop singing like a canary, but ain't nobody gonna listen to her. Strange, aberrant behavior against an innocent woman, making guilty randos look really good. The Bible has this to say about such activity of this nature. Hear me out. The Lord cannot stand unequal scales, so injustice, and he hates the condemnation of the righteous with the acquittal of the wicked. The Lord cannot stand, he hates the condemnation of the righteous and the acquittal of the wicked. My cousin is the wicked that's been acquitted, and I am the righteous that has been condemned. He said, I will not be condemned when brought to trial. So essentially, if Psalm 37 is true of my life, it's only a matter of time before this charlatan called my cousin gets brought out gango lidi washing as what she is. She put herself in a position to be severely disgraced because she dared imagine herself the Beyonce to my Kelly. In my dream, Kelly Rowland was there. Now that you have that context, let me tell you the dream. We were in that school, yeah, Pinky, that setting in that movie, as boarding school children. And among the students was myself, other girls I did not notice there, Kelly Rowland, like the doctor that prescribed for me tretinoin, that I still haven't fixed the prescription from. Remember recently I had some flu cough condition that I went to the doctor for, and he decided to give me a diagnosis for my skin. That doctor was there in the capacity of a doctor, but he looked like some shoddy, like unbelievable, ignorable, worthless, random, don't even know how you passed med school, you don't even have enough clients type doctor. When frankly in my eyes he is a very excellent man, and he was subjugated to the tyranny of having above him as a colleague that nonetheless is facing the promotion instead of him as a doctor. So they're both working in not the hospital but the medical center, and his colleague was some crooked other doctor that was elevated above him, that was nothing in comparison to him in terms of his skills, his ability to diagnose, prognose, basically just whatever it is that makes you a good doctor. This guy was a good doctor, but his colleague was some woman that was substandard and yet getting the promotion. She was substandard and yet getting his attention, and him subduing himself to her. Dream happened in an ecosystem where it was a mix of the school, and there were medical quarters in the school. And the medical quarters, the doctors in charge, not in charge, but on duty, were the doctor who helped me along with my skin, alongside another doctor woman that I did not recognize, but who was boss over him, but who was also crooked. And yeah, anyway, whatever. So the dream commences with me sitting in a bedroom. Like, you know, in boarding schools, you've got these beds all over, say 10 in one communal living arrangement. And sometimes the girls, before it's lights out, would gather in like the center, and they would play with each other's hair, plait each other, comb one another's hair. In this dream, I was sitting in this communal space while all the girls were talking, chatting. Then all of a sudden, Kelly Rowland appeared among them, and all the girls were like, "Ooh, Kelly, hi!" And they were combing her hair, and they basically revered her. They really loved her. And then I looked back and I was like, "Oh, are you Kelly Rowland?" And then she's like, "Yeah." And then I was like, "Oh my goodness." I then went on right ahead to act like, yeah, okay, so Kelly Rowland is sitting among us. It ain't much. It was the Kelly Rowland that we understand as Kelly Rowland today. In other words, she's a celebrity. Like, sit around Kelly and be like, "Oh, okay, you're Kelly." But I did that in my dream. First I was like starstruck, and I was like, "Are you Kelly? Is this Kelly?" And then she was like, "Yes." And everybody was like, "Yeah, it's Kelly." And they were combing her hair, like the way that you would play with a doll or somebody that you really just kind of like look up to. But I greeted her. I starstruck said, "Are you Kelly Rowland?" But after she confirmed who she was, I then just ignored her and moved on. Why? Because of the fact that she was in this environment. She was in this environment. It's like, what are you doing in this boarding school for random South African girls? Like, it's nothing. It's lowly. There's nothing to write home about this situation. So just based on where Kelly Rowland was, I decided that I'm not going to be too much of a fan. I decided that I'm not going to blow her head up, because I thoroughly imagined her to be on the same level as me. I was like, if she's here, then she's just as good as me. So I underestimated what Kelly was. And Kelly's face then morphed, right? It didn't morph. It's like when I looked at her face, initially I was like, "Are you Kelly Rowland?" And then she was like, "Yeah." And then everybody was busy brushing her hair. I then I hovered around in the environment, and as I kept on looking at her, thinking in my mind, should I ask for an autograph? Should I this? Should I that? Before I made a decision to just ignore her and not do much else other than just acknowledge that Kelly Rowland is among us, I looked at her, and her face just became so beautiful. Like, she became so pretty. And what emanated out of her was that she would make for a really happy wife, as an umfazi, a spouse, that she would make for a really happy spouse. Like, any man marry her would treat her like a queen, because she's so amazing and she's so pretty. And upon these thoughts rocking up in my mind, bubbling up, I then got jealous of her. You know, I keep saying this over and over again. When you're misplaced, when you're in the wrong environment for who you are supposed to truly be, people will have the brazen audacity upon gazing at your beauty, gazing at your glory, gazing at your star talent, gazing at everything that you are. They will look at it like you're just one of them, and they will then compete with you. They will not recognize the potential of what you could be, and so therefore respect the giftedness that you have as excellent above theirs. And so they will compete with you like the way that you would grovel and compete in a cockpit with girls that are your peers in your high school. The moment Beyonce got out from regular high school, or Kelly got out from regular high school, they became elevated and pedestaled to a point where people in that same peer group would not anymore be so dumb as to covet or envy them, but rather look at them as role models or as somebody that is just far loftier than me, because they finally broke into an environment that their talent mapped against. But when you are a talented, gifted person that stays in the grain of lowliness, wherever you're at, if you never break through, if you never break past your little village, you will be envied by the village girls for your excellent talent that ought not be in the village. You will therefore be mistreated out of envy by these village girls since you're still in the village. And I had a village mentality in my dream, where I was treating Kelly Rowland like a village girl. And so I was like, whatever, she's nothing. I knew what she could be. I knew how amazing she was. But because she was among me in the village, in this little school, I was not about to go and compliment her. I was not about to go and ask for her autograph. Come on, she's one of us. I was not about to toot her horn. That was my thought in my dream. So I moved away from Kelly Rowland, and then I went into, as soon as I left that room, where I left Kelly Rowland without praising her, I then was in the doctor's rooms. I don't even know why it moved into that. And I found the doctor that I consider to be very excellent. One of the best I've ever been consulted by. Groveling and begging at the feet of a colleague that was far more substandard to him. And this colleague of this doctor was so bossy towards me and this doctor that I ended up keeping quiet, even though I was very talkative in my dream, because I was scared of her. She, however, was substandard in comparison to this doctor. But I ended up disrespecting low-key this doctor in favor of her, purely because she had been given elevation above him in this unfair ecosystem. The dream then progressed to where me and the girls were somewhere hanging out together. And one of the girls broke away because her brothers came to pick her up in some old school Toyota Corolla. It was like, maybe, like in boarding school, sometimes on weekends, you get picked up to go home. This girl got picked up. Her brothers were waiting for her outside. Her name was Khotatso. Khotatso means comfort or comforter. It's basically a word to describe somebody or a presence of something very soothing. This girl's name was Khotatso, and she went to go home with her brothers, two of her brothers. They were driving this old school Toyota Corolla, and her brothers, when she went, not really beggar and everything, she went close to the car, trying to open the window at the door at the back to get in. And her brothers made a joke out of her, a laughing stock, by driving off as she was opening the door, and she fell on the floor, getting all dirty with the soil on the floor, the mud, not mud, but the moo Mofatse, the soil, yeah. And it was a joke to them. As they were driving off, they hooted and they were laughing at her. On some, we promised to pick you up this weekend, but it was just a prank. And they just drove off, leaving her with dust and very sad, brokenhearted, also hurt, injured, because it was upon opening the door that they drove off, and so they kind of yanked her with. So she was injured and she was crying, and she came back to the rest of us, Allah, and nobody cared to ask her, Khothatso, what happened? What happened, girl? We're so sorry. Why did they do that to you? Everybody just looked at her and ignored her in her sorrow. And so much so did they ignore Khothatso that she ended up wandering off on her own and being isolated and ostracized, living life just by herself in this boarding school full of other girls. They have just left her because she had been disappointed by her brothers, who were supposed to pick her up but did not. They teased her with being able to escape or leave for the weekend to go home. And then they just drove off. And in this room full of girls ignoring Khothatso, my cousin was there. And my cousin was hanging out as a student herself amidst these students who were ignoring Khothatso. And I was trying to talk to her. And I was like, hello guys, Khothatso is in trouble. Khothatso is hurt. Khothatso might do something to herself. Khothatso is heartbroken. Khothatso. And then I'm talking and my cousin is looking at me while all these other girls are laughing at me. It's like, let's say there was a group of 10 girls and then my cousin is standing here and then I'm talking to these 10 girls. It's like my cousin was a, what do you call this thing? A silent, a sound proof between me and these other girls. I was trying to warn them about the indiscretion committed against Khothatso and how it is that there are boys that are supposed to come and pick us up to take us home, and they are pulling pranks on us, almost injuring us. And Khothatso was the first to be pulled such a prank on, and now she's living in isolation. And I tried to warn these girls about the epidemic of irresponsible boys not doing what they're supposed to do by girls. And my cousin was standing in the middle of me and these girls who could not hear me. They were not listening to me. And she stood there looking at me on some, no one is listening to you. Just give up. This warning was not just for my cousin, for these girls, on behalf of Khothatso too, but it was also for my cousin. Because in and of herself, she stood to be abandoned by these guys that were pulling these pranks on these girls. But to her, it was like, no one will ever listen to you. And ultimately, after speaking enough times, while she gave me that snarly look on some, you're talking to a wall, girl. You're talking to a wall. Ultimately, after giving me that look, my heart got so broken from being ignored that I just walked out and I left. And when I walked out and I left, she did not follow me. She did not come after me. If anything, I heard what she was thinking in her heart. In her heart, she was thinking, no one is going to miss you. Just go. No one is going to miss you. Just go. And then the dream ended with me ignored. That whole dream, what in the world was God showing me with it? I will interpret briefly because I'm already at 58 minutes talking now. The Kelly Rowland scene, I believe I've already explained it. The pinky setting. The school with the pinky setting was the Lord showing me a climate of misogyny, of sexual harassment, of dead men, essentially. The whole ecosystem was being run by dead men who are dead in trespasses and sins, but are dead in that I have been caught talking about this for a minute. There is a whole bad vibe issue with gender-based violence in the country, and it has been started by a cult in KZN. I've said this over and over again, and it has spurned from the ground dead men who are committing dead deeds, and the primary modus operandi of these men is sexual harassment. It is a very sexually perverse cult where they slap women kakorobela. They are rapists of women in that they slip things into their drinks spiritually and sleep with them. They take wives that don't belong to them. They are devil worshippers, occult menaces that keep on marrying women that are like children. That whole scene was in a high school and all of us were like kids. So it's basically immature women who have not grown out of a dumb mindset, who are just in a rush, sprinting instead of walking down the aisle. And so just to get married, they will allow themselves to get taken by anything and anyone. And so there is an epidemic in the country of more women marrying men that they initially started out happy with. And then in the marriage, they become abusive. They become strange. They also end up settling. They get pursued by men, okay, who they don't want initially. And then all of a sudden their feelings for these men change. They now have feelings for them, not realizing that kikorobela. And this is happening across all of South Africa, and it is responsible. It is the primary reason why there is gender-based violence in the country. Women are being drugged into marriages. It's an epidemic. It is a curse on the land. There are more women married to men they did not sign up for than frankly leaves to than frankly is worthy of being desired. That is something worthwhile to be shouted on the rooftops to warn. But there are gatekeepers preventing other women from hearing the truth. And these gatekeepers are other women. And the other women that are gatekeepers are women that were irresponsible from long ago. They've always just been menaces, loose. And they don't want other women to live virtuous lives that are above reproach, that have not made mistakes. So they basically want to drag everybody with them. Like misery loves company. And my cousin was an irresponsible growing up. And now she is trying to drag every lost South African woman into the pit, the cesspool of rubbish that she is in. In the school. It was a school, evidencing how small women are in the country. Kibana, they're like teenage girls that aren't paying attention. And among these teenage girls are women that are so poignant and prolific that they should not be in this environment, and yet they are. Just like Kelly Rowland, a woman that was overshadowed by another woman because of irresponsible men, because of an irresponsible man. Her whole life was just basically put in the shadow of Beyonce because of Beyonce's parents, especially the dad. And that whole ecosystem was playing out in this show, you can call it that, but in this dream. Kelly Rowland ought not have been, because she was Kelly Rowland, she was admired by all the other girls. Because that's just what happens when a girl is a cut above the rest. When she stands out from her peers, she will tend to be admired by kids that are not jealous. And that was the case with me when I was in school. I was admired by girls in my grade, girls in grades lower than me. I like, especially the lower, like when I got older, moving into matric, I had little fans in grade 8 and 9. They admired me. They saw there was something special about me and they chose to admire it. So essentially, I was a woman set apart for a bigger thing in the future. I was going to march to the beat of a different drum. It was inevitable. And lo and behold, indeed, I got out of high school and that started to happen. I became differentiated from everybody else. I grew quickly, fast. In comparison to my friends, I did everything like that. Things just happened for me in my come up. But the woman that I was in that dream underestimated and jealously therefore withheld praise from Kelly. That was God showing me what happens to a person in an environment where they are big, girthy, set apart for a lot of stuff, that nonetheless stay in a grain, that don't break out. When they don't break out of that mold, they then are subjugated to the tyranny of being envied by people who have no business seeing them as of the same league. They're not in the same plane. They are different given their suite of giftedness. They're supposed to be doing a different thing. But because you find yourself in this environment, all of a sudden, and so you don't get praised as much. The same person that would have been a fan of yours now is looking at you and saying, I'm not going to praise this girl. She's in my same class, she's in the same environment. The only way that you ultimately gain the respect and the reverence and the honor that you deserve is if you finally get what it is that you were supposed to do in life done. Is if you finally do what you were supposed to do with your gifts and what you were supposed to do with your talents. But if you don't use your gifts and your talents properly, like Kelly Rowland, you will fade in the background of another person that was put above you. You don't break out of it in time. So the rest of your life is basically dedicated to being a skivvy to Beyonce when you are supposed to be something so much bigger. So that's why God used Kelly Rowland. He is showing me the epidemic of witchcraft in the country that is causing people to stay in certain places, smothering them, keeping them lowly, so that other randos can shine above them and cause so much jealousy against them because they're so talented. They're so gifted. And so all of these lackluster broads all over the show will envy them instead of admire them because they did not break out of the mold. So that's why I was passing Kelly shade. And also, if as a woman, you don't get out of a particular mold, you will never be truly loved by your husband. You will never have a man rock up in your ecosystem basically thinking, oh my goodness, this at last is bone of my bone, flesh of my flesh. This man will not be able to recognize the valuable woman that you are. So like Kelly Rowland, you're going to have a husband comparing you to Beyonce. You gotta break out of the mold. You gotta snatch yourself from underneath the bosom of some heavy-handed random woman that is trying to keep you down, because as you get older, it becomes clear that you were the one that was more gifted. As my cousin and I got older, it became clear over time that that was holding all the girth, even though I was ignored as a child, like a little duckling, ugly duckling that becomes a swan later on. But unfortunately, when people find this out, they then go and they use witchcraft to keep a person down, so they can always be the thing that shines. And that's what my cousin did. She hooked up witchcraft and messed up with my entire life and my entire future, and tried to convince the world that I've always been Beyonce. I've always been the big one. I've always been number one. And Karabo will always be my skivvy. She will always be something substandard. Except I never did any of the random dumb stuff that she hoped I would do. I didn't go and have a baby because na teletext na medical aid. I did not go and marry some random dude or loyang. I did not ABCD, etc. I'm still waiting on God, and that is irritating her. So now the next mission is to cause me to get ignored by everybody. She's casting spells, hoping that no one will listen to me. Why? Because she's kept me so lowly. Or at least she thinks she's done that. This is God's work, all of it. But keeping me so lowly that even though I have a very important message to give, I'm being ignored by everybody. Nobody's listening to me until I give up. In the dream, a good doctor serving and was at the beck and call of a bad doctor. That was God showing me that true Christians are serving and are at the mercy. False believers, lukewarmers, they're running churches. The Bible calls Jesus a heavenly physician. And so if we as his disciples emulate him, we're like his residents in a hospital where we are patching people up in a triage or whatever. So we are also like little mini doctors, healing people. And there was a very excellent doctor that was subjugated to the tyranny of some bad witchy woman that was lording it over everybody with an iron fist, even though she was substandard in comparison to that doctor. There is an epidemic currently, an issue in South Africa and maybe in the world at large, of false Christians, people who are into witchcraft, fornication. They're flaccid, they're fluffy, they're fallen. Their doctrine is also messed up. They are talking rubbish at the pulpit, but how they've got so many people listening to them. They've got audiences for days. But that's just Bible prophecy being fulfilled. That in the last days, people will not endure sound doctrine, and so having itching ears, they will gather for themselves a great deal of teachers, sending them aside to myths. They will gather for themselves a great number of teachers, teaching them what the itching ears want to hear. So, of course, good doctors will be passed up. True Christians will be passed up in favor of falsehood all over the show. They will take a Creflo dollar any day before they will listen to a Paul Washer. That's what's going on. So that was what was happening in my dream. And the wicked are hoping that that ecosystem is going to thrive indefinitely with no reprieve against the victims. Then the whole scene with the brothers driving off upon a woman hoping that she's going to get to go home. That was God showing me the state of men in the country. They are supposed to be helping along. They're supposed to be teaching. They're supposed to be taking care of women. They are supposed to be picking up people and taking them home. In other words, to heaven. They're supposed to be preaching, these buggers. But they're playing tricks, they're pulling stunts, and they're hurting women. They're giving them promises of redemption and they're not coming through for them. They're also helping them only 5 seconds in and then dropping them, abandoning them. Look at what happened to me. Most of the people that have come through to help my cause have been men, and they have dumped me along the way upon there being nothing in it for them. So they rock up claiming to be chivalrous, and then they drive off in some old school car, evidencing their old dead deeds, leaving women isolated and embarrassed, and also suffering want, also suffering injury, and getting no support from fellow females at all. And with other women being unprepared to allow other women to go and comfort that particular woman. Like my cousin standing in the middle of me talking about Khotatso and how Khotatso is in trouble. We gotta go look for her because she's living alone. She is in danger. She could do something to herself. She's hurting. Women are leaving other women alone after men have laid them waste, making a joke out of them, promising that I'm gonna save you, I'm gonna help you get your life back together. And as soon as it appears there is nothing in it for them, driving off while this woman is about to open a door so she can go home. They're pulling tricks on women. And this woman's name that was facing death because of depression, her name was Khotats, or comfort. Essentially, she is a woman that was in a position to give comfort to nations, to many, but she's facing death. And that is exactly what's going on with me. I'm like Khotatso, able to give people comfort, lead them to the Lord. And yet I am living in isolation, ostracized, absolutely persecuted because of evil men that left me wanting, evil men that left me stranded, that helped me for 5 seconds, claiming to pick me up, and then driving off, making out of me a joke. While other women laugh at me, and evil women, Jezebels, are standing in the middle of me talking to other women so they can be sober. And what this is causing is big women that should be where they are at as role models are being now looked at as one of us, since you're still trapped in the village, and then being subjugated to the tyranny of jealousy by women who are substandard in comparison to them, don't have as much talent. But because you're in my ecosystem, and I'm not even going to praise you. While heavenly physicians that God has given a baton to heal wounds of many are being overlooked for false shepherds. That's what that dream was. So when I woke up from that nightmare, with my cousin being that trucker block in front of me and those 2 other men driving off, that's when I realized that my YouTube channel struggling to go anywhere and me being unable to upload my content was because of the wickedness in this nightmare. It's the witchcraft in this nightmare. There was an attempt to brittle goodness in favor of evil and elevate wicked people against the better judgment of the godly, to keep truly good people, while some filthy little random like my cousin respected, heralded, rewarded, while some fake doctor overwhelms the real deal. And that's apparently a world that these wicked men and women imagine God is going to just let run a mock and Jeffela doing its thing into the sunset. Good is called evil and evil is called good. The world is upside down, namhlanje. You're bewitching YouTube channels, making sure that they don't get anywhere. Well, herein lies the end result of that. This whole ecosystem was in a pinky setting, evidencing that there is an evil, wicked fallenness by our men, that because of their sexual perversion against women, they've created a haunting out of an entire nation. And now Jezebel women are running these streets, mocking everybody, preventing other women from turning to Christ and abandoning those that are truly comforting to live by themselves in isolation, roaming around after having been humiliated by men that played a trick on a woman that they could not afford to play a trick on. Men of which were called by God to preach, but they chose to play games. Because for them, it's always just been about getting their bread buttered on both sides, having the cake and eating it too, burping after consuming food, and then saying they've done nothing. That was my dream. That's what's going on in this world. That's what happened to my YouTube channel. But this is what it is that I have to say about it once that nonsense has been committed against me. I'm gonna preach, I'm gonna talk on the rooftops to you, understand? And I'm also gonna conquer. The fact that you have to get 3 different devil worshippers to cast one spell on me, the same spell on me, just to get my YouTube channel to freeze, and even then just a couple of hours of prayer sets it free, evidences that you're scared of me. So be afraid, be very afraid, because indeed you ought be, because I belong to the one true God who you ought fear, and I'm seated in heavenly places with him, and you ought fear him so much that you would abandon your filthy deeds of darkness. And you also ought fear him because he exposes them to me, to a point where I will rap on about that for a minute in my ministry. I'm not going anywhere, and even if I might upload 8 hours late, bottom line is I will continue to upload, and I will continue to work daily, and if I must upload 2 batches of work per day, I will do that. And as for you, cousin, you have fallen. Indeed, it has been exposed to everybody that you're that thing. Only reason why anybody at all is still standing with you, cousin Doe, is because in and of themselves they're guilty for abandoning me. My mom is standing with you because she's guilty for abandoning me. My sister is standing with you because she's guilty for abandoning me. Your own dad is standing with you because he's guilty for abandoning me. And your own sister is sitting out all this nonsense because she's like Solange to Beyonce, willing to accept Uguti. She's nothing in comparison to you. Why? Because you're the older sister. Even though daddy has been unfair in favor of you, you're the kid that's always been the derelict, and so you will always fall short in comparison to the good girl. And today you're trying to keep me lowly, and you went and married Satane Engwe, and the 2 of y'all are busy painting the town red, hoping that my story is not going to humiliate you. Well, it's going to do that. And the more you cast spells on me, the more you do witchcraft on me, the more I expose you, and the more embarrassed you become. So I would highly recommend that you stop doing witchcraft, so I will stop calling you out so much, because then on that day you might be spared from as much embarrassment as what you will inevitably endure if you carry on like this. Don't say I didn't warn you. I'm signing out in Christ's name. Signing out. Peace.